I call this workshop of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this workshop has been duly called and that notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. And with that, we will go ahead and jump straight down into the agenda. The first item up is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments at this time? Okay. Then we will jump down into information item and the special education update.
Hello, everybody. I would like to first of all say thank you for the opportunity to give you just a snapshot of what's going on in special education in Bryan ISD. We are staying very busy. Imagine that. And we are continuing to grow our SPED family here in Bryan ISD. You can see here that we do have a trend upward. We are continuing to add students to the roll. This next slide provides a lot of information on one slide, so I do want to give you just a second to look at it. This slide talks about our special programs, the specially designed programs here in Bryan ISD. The first square on this slide is for inclusion. That is the environment that most of our children are going to access, even if they do participate in some of the other programs. We do have, to the greatest extent possible, our students are going to be participating in inclusion environments, and we're very proud of that push and the results that we're seeing there. We also have resource classrooms. We have our regional day school for the deaf. We have our sales classroom for our students with those most significant cognitively disabled challenges. We have our flex supports, which is a heavy inclusion support for students who have social deficits. Our PASS program is for our students who have behavioral challenges. Our SOAR program is for students who have the most significant behavioral challenges. And we also have an 18-plus program, which we're pretty proud of. That is something that helps us support kiddos who are not quite ready to leave us and fly on their own, but we help them connect to post-secondary opportunities for work and work study and so forth. And then, of course, our early childhood classrooms, which might be the place that I go when I really just need to reconnect. If I'm missing, check ECS. It's challenging. It's not easy work, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great place. The next slide here talks just a little bit about our district administrative leadership type staff. You're familiar with most of these titles, these individuals, and I just can't brag enough about them. I wish I had more time to specifically call each one out to say we could not do the work we're doing without their dedication and their out-of-the-box thinking, their creativity. It's a wonderful thing. We have wonderful people here. This next slide talks about some of our staff members who provide something that is a little bit more unique to special education. In addition to the instructional coaches and so forth that we replicate, that we also see in Gen Ed, we have diagnosticians, LSSPs. You have graciously supported us adding a staff member or two in my short tenure here in some of these areas because our SPED family is growing. And again, I just cannot brag enough about their dedication, their out-of-the-box thinking, their finding ways to address student needs. And just when you think you've seen it all, we get a new friend who needs something a little bit special, and these guys, they're going to step up and they're going to figure it out. Talking a little bit about referrals. Did I mention we're growing?
Wow.
Should I come to you in the future and say, hey, remember when we talked about growth? We might need another staff member or two. This is an example of some of the growth. Whenever COVID hit, we had to put the brakes on some of our evaluations, and then some of those evaluations, of course, carried forward to this year. And so that does impact the number in that box for this year. However, even without COVID, we are continuing to see an annual increase in the number of evaluations that are being requested of the department. So I did want you to have that information.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back? Do you feel like, and of course I know, I mean, it's kind of like overwhelming, needless to say, but are any of the 697 referrals, or 600, are any of them found not to necessarily need this service?
Yes, ma'am. We do have the acronym we use in our office, DNQ,
Right.
does not qualify. We do have some students, after they go through the assessment process, that they do not qualify for special education. However, we don't find that to be a waste, because at the end of that evaluation process, we are able to provide the campus, the teacher, the family with very valuable information. So we do feel like we're still offering assistance, even if the students don't qualify.
Good.
There's also new rules that allow a parent to ask for their child to be tested at any given time, even if the school is not seeing the need. So that may attribute to some more testing, now not necessarily more qualifying, but more testing.
Right. But it helps the parents'
Right.
feelings and their thoughts after they get to be evaluated.
Yes, it does. What we really would want our parents to do, though, is not circumvent the process that leads up to, hey, well, let's try this, let's add this intervention, before we move straight to a special education evaluation, because it could be a relatively simple fix that maybe someone just hadn't considered yet. So that is an option also. Okay. All right, with regard to COVID impact and our response, if I haven't made it evident, we have a really great SPED team. These folks, it was all hands on deck, even if on deck was virtual. Does that make sense? We had people coming together to develop remote learning plans for our students who were remote. And then even when we brought kids back to school, we had to have a plan B, if you will, for kiddos who either stayed home or perhaps a classroom closed, or perhaps that child did have to quarantine either because they tested positive or a family member tested positive. We had to have something ready so that we could just say, okay, instead of using this plan, these minutes, we're going to look at this plan instead, and you're going to communicate with your teacher from this time to this time, and we're going to work on math, we're going to work on reading. And we had to have very strong partnerships with parents to make that work, and we were successful in many, many cases. And of course, there were a time or two where maybe a kiddo didn't log on when they were supposed to, or a parent had a question that we had to go back and re-explain so that we could play catch up a little bit. But I really feel like as a department, we were very successful there. We had to, I think probably one of our most challenging things was trying to offer occupational and physical therapy virtually. Talk about a lot of parent communication and a lot of partnership, and really just explaining how they could use household items for stretching, stepping, kicking a ball, trying to make it as fun and engaging as we could for the parent and the child so that they would continue to take advantage of those services. Okay, I probably need to move on. I get really excited about this.
I have one more question that
Yes,
I promise I want to ask and get. Did you have to have a change of placement every time those kids left school and were quarantined, or had to go home or went from home back to school?
We did not have to have a change of placement ARD. If the parent wanted to have a change of placement ARD, we of course would hold a formal ARD. But with direction from TEA, we were allowed to do this through the amendment process, where as long as the campus administrator, the teacher, and the parent were in agreement with the changes, and we of course got parent input on those changes, but at the end of the conversation, if everyone is in agreement, we were able to get our signatures and then move forward. So it did save some time. All right, let's see. Another celebration that I would just like to share with you is that we did have a couple of instances where we had to have our staff actually go to a student's home because perhaps the student was very immunocompromised, or the parent was just very, very anxious and didn't want to bring that child to a Bryan ISD building. Then we came together, we figured out what kind of extra added protection that we needed. The masks, the hand sanitizer, the whole 9 yards. And our staff did not hesitate. They didn't skip a beat. We didn't hear any, I don't feel comfortable. They were ready and eager because they wanted to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do for those kids. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, with response services, we are going to have to, of course, make up for services that were missed, services that maybe a speech therapy plan was not able to be delivered to the extent possible, or the extent that it was written down in the IEP. We can either add minutes this year so that we can make up some of that time. We can do it over the summer. We can do it after school. And you can imagine as many different kids and as many different services as we have, we're having lots of conversations about that. There are many children who will not need compensatory services because of the hard work that was put in by our curriculum department to address changes in curriculum and trying to make sure that we're catching kids up. So not all of our kids in special education are going to be needing that compensatory service, but the ones who are, we're having those discussions in our meetings now. So we're on it. Let's see, and also I would like to say that we are continuing to provide support to teachers through things like online PLCs, online office hours, things that you've probably heard from other folks giving you updates around the district, because we want to make sure that we are continuing that ongoing high-quality service delivery, and in some cases it's been really nice to be able to say, well, hey, let's hop on Google Hangout or Zoom and I'll explain that to you, where we're finding new ways to just turn lemons into lemonade with the way some of this stuff rolled out. Okay, going on. And this, if I might say, is a big celebration for our department. You may have heard that we had a cyclical monitoring review. And this is something that is going to happen in every district in the state over the next several years. The purpose is to conduct a comprehensive analysis of each district's special education program and the policies. And our visit was supposed to happen in the spring of 2020. Then we had a little hiccup there. So it was moved to the fall, no pressure. And so we actually conducted that visit virtually. And based upon the data that they collected from interviews, folder reviews, lots and lots of paperwork, we are able to say that we had no areas of noncompliance.
That's amazing.
And I may be the one sitting here, but it was a team. The campus principals, the teachers, our instructional aides, your support when we came and we said we need XYZ material. So this is a celebration for our entire district, not just our special education team. So I have just here a list of some of the areas that they looked at. Lots of folders. They conducted interviews. They interviewed parents. They interviewed principals. They interviewed our staff here in BISD. Let's see. Some of the strengths that were listed had to do with our present levels of academic and functional performance. This is something that is written into the IEP to just introduce the student to the new IEP team, the new R team. And they were very complimentary and even asked for our training and how we roll out training for this particular item for our teachers. And so, of course, we were happy to oblige. And other things that they complimented on us on our intensive programs of instruction, accommodations and modifications being delivered. We were able to produce artifacts that backed up the paperwork that we submitted. We were able to quickly and easily back up anything that we said that we were doing. They were really impressed with the staff understanding of the importance of things like the transition process and knowing our students. And believe it or not, they were impressed, or from surveys, they were impressed with people's appreciation of improved communication. Because communication is always one of those things that you're always trying to improve, so I was happy to hear that. So areas of continued focus will be opportunities to continue to have our special educators and general education educators get together to talk about those kids. We want to continue our training and implementation of differentiated instruction to keep those kids in an inclusion environment and support that to the greatest extent possible. We also want to continue our training with positive behavior supports and make sure that we are staying on top of our timelines. We want to make sure that you guys know we have an ongoing commitment to an internal review. We do get together and we talk about any hiccups that we see. If we notice that, somebody is not getting to their product reports as quickly as possible, we want to figure out why and how we can support that teacher. So we want to remain compliant. It just feels good, and we want to keep that going. Our top 3 comments, if you will, from our TEA visit are listed here on this next slide. The interviews described a mission to establish a culture of service and joy. Okay, I could stop right there and I would be just super happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The leadership team meets routinely to address campus and system concerns. Administrators are visible, we answer questions, and we participate in support-driven efforts. Number 2, staff described a concerted effort to ensure all students have the opportunity to participate in extracurriculars and school-sponsored events. The district vision is to have students find their passion area and support those interests as much as possible. So at the end of the day, reading and writing, absolutely, we need those kids to have those skills. But we also want them to have rich lives, have friendships. So, yeah, again, I will go on and on. I apologize. And the last comment.
Yes, ma'am. I know you've earned this one.
You guys are the bomb diggity. That
I
is
love
a
it.
direct quote from TEA.
From TEA,
Yeah.
no less.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I've been in education quite a while. Never have I seen any TEA document in any place, any department, any division that says that, ever. So congratulations to the special ed department. That's a first.
And again, it was a team effort.
Dr. George literally stopped them in the conversation and said, "May I please quote you on that?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, you have earned that."
Oh, that is, man, amazing.
Well, I wasn't sure when I read it that it was a good thing.
And I am here to tell you that I was smiling from ear to ear. It's a very good thing. Okay, so given all that I've shared in this update, I would like to close with a few pictures of our kids at work and just maybe give you a window into what is going on in some of our special education classrooms. Here we have an example, and I'm at the age where if I take these down, I can see you and I put them on, so I apologize. Let's see, we are building routine with morning activities, and it's a little bit hard to see, but in that second picture, we actually have virtual learners participating during this live lesson, so that's a celebration. And we are looking at everything from social skills, academic skills, and behavior skills with these little ones, hopefully to get them ready to move into an inclusion environment. So if we're able to teach them, take turns, sit still, just those basic things that they struggle with a little bit more, then they will be more successful. Accessing the curriculum through small group instruction. The first picture here, we actually have a teacher who was able to pull a student aside just for a few minutes to review some sight words because there was just a little bit of downtime waiting for another group to come in. And it's so engaging, and she has such a good relationship with this kid that he wanted to review these sight words. So, and the other one we have here, they're working right there. Every one of those students is working on something that is on, it's all writing, but it's a little bit of a different lesson, a different level. So here we have independent work skills. The first student here, we are looking at a kind of an inbox activity and doing as much prompting as necessary, but no more than what is absolutely necessary to try to build those independent learning skills. Visuals. We can't underestimate the importance of visuals. I use them, you use them. our students rely on them. And that the second picture here, we actually have a student with a visual of her family there. Mom had a baby over spring break. She is very attached to her family. She's able to carry this around with her. And whenever staff realized that small visual helped decrease behavior outburst significantly, it was like, oh yes, please, absolutely, you can carry a picture around so that we can get on and work on the other things that you need to do in class. Here are some of our older kids. First picture, we're saying the pledge with ASL support. Second picture, we are talking about weather. Accessing the curriculum using adaptive novels. All these kids are working on the same novel, but maybe on different reading levels. Here we are working on a Star Alt review, and then we have a student who is participating in a Schoology lesson. So I think I probably went over time. I apologize, but I hope it was worth it because I was very happy to share that information with you guys. Do you have any questions for me?
I do have one. This may not even have anything to do with special ed, but I remember some term that was always sounded a little strange to me, but, and maybe just tell me if this has anything to do with what y'all do, is response and intervention, response and intervention. Do you know what I'm talking about?
RTI.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me if that is part of what y'all deal with, or am I thinking of something?
It is tangentially related, I'll say. The response to intervention process will take place, and hopefully, we mentioned the comment of where parents can request a special education evaluation, just because. One thing that we would really like for that parent to do is talk to the campus about what other things might be available through a response to intervention type support program so that it will avoid that path to special ed if it's not needed. Now, of course, if we are needed, we are there, we will jump in. That's why we're here. We applied for this job. But if the kids can be served through a program outside of special ed, it's just the least restrictive environment, and there are great things that our curriculum department offers, great interventions, and very hardworking people that are there to help. So, and I guess our point person for response to intervention would be Kristen Beesall.
Thank you.
Dr. George, I have been a part of the district teaching or in some form or fashion since '81, and I know that there's probably teachers in special ed that are still here that started back there. All special ed teachers, including those who've been here for a long time, since you've been here, probably think they died and went to heaven. So thank you so much for your soft-spoken, wonderful attitude and your enthusiasm. Ooh, just makes me want to cry because
No, don't cry. If you cry,
we need you so badly. So thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that.
If I can add a comment to kind of piggyback off of what Ruthie says. A couple of years ago, maybe 4 now since I've been here, personally, I've had a number of families not considering Bryan because of the program, communication, training, et cetera. So this brings me so much joy just seeing what we have going on so far. So I commend you and your entire team for that.
Thank you.
For bringing it up to this level.
I will pass it on. Now, we still have, things we're working on, of
Of
course.
course.
There's always room for growth.
Absolutely.
Always something new to learn, but I think we have the team to get it done.
Very
I
good.
also want to just say thank you, Dr. George. When I got on the board about 5 years ago, does that sound right, 4 or 5 years ago? And I was just shocked at the number of special ed issues we were dealing with. And so I just want to thank you for, we're not having to do that anymore as a board. So just thank you for all of your efforts to not just make us compliant, but to bring it to a place where there is a culture of joy and help and taking care of all the different constituent groups. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I will definitely pass it on, because again, it's my team, our special ed team.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, next up, we have the 5th through 8 English, Language Arts, and Social Studies update.
Down, just wanted to, this is a continuation in our series that we've been working on since the fall semester. And as you well know, last week we looked at 5 through 8 math and science. So the team is here this week with 5 through 8 ELA and social studies. Dr. Holtkamp.
So I'm excited to be here it's not evening, it's lunchtime. So thank you for allowing us to be here. I have our ELA elementary coordinator, Charlene Muhlstein, here, as well as Brandy Morley, our secondary ELA coordinator, and Janice Kinley, our social studies coordinator. So we are going to share with you a little bit about 5 through 8 ELA and social studies. We're going to start with our instructional coaching support model. Of course, our IC model is here to, is established to support our teachers and our principals. We use the Jim Knight model. That is the model that we use to guide our work. ICs are here to help our teachers in planning, modeling, creating resources. This year we created more video resources for our remote learners and included those in our curriculum. Our coaches also are instrumental in helping write our curriculum and help lead collaboratives in PD. Our instructional team also partners with our principals to conduct classroom walks. And as we walk with principals, we collaborate together to help to improve instructional best practices at the campus level. Principals meet with our instructional coaches. It's usually on a weekly basis, but they bounce things off of our coaches and help to collaborate and plan for campus activities. Also, one of our goals is to continue our work on literacy. So our team collaborates with principals to support reading campaigns as well as professional development that promotes literacy. We do recognize that there is learning gaps due to unfinished learning. So the CNI team has responded in a multitude of ways. One way is that we looked at our standards. We looked at our standards from last year that needed to be retaught, and we resubmitted and reorganized our scope and sequence to address those needs for our students. With the new block schedule, there were also adjustments that needed to be made within our curriculum. The block schedule was adjusted from 7 through 12, actually. The team responded by readjusting the scope and sequence to maximize those number of minutes that were added daily. And Bryan ISD offers a variety of course offerings to meet the needs of our learners. These courses are taught, we teach the TEKS at every grade level, but they provide a variety of programs to meet acceleration. We provide them for enrichment as well as language support or remediation based on our students' needs.
And I'm Charlene Muhlstein. I've been here before, right? We've talked about K4, so I'm going to talk to you about our 5th grade ELA and social studies block. It is a combined block in 5th grade, so the students stay there with the same teacher. And in 5th grade, you may remember this visual. We follow the same balanced literacy model as we do in K4 because it follows the recursive and reciprocal nature of our TEKS in 5th grade. And you'll see our main components. We have word study with those foundational skills. We have reading workshop. We have writing workshop. A change in 5th grade with our revised TEKS 2 years ago is that phonics was moved into 5th grade. Instead of stopping at 4th, went into 5th. And so that just, I think, is in response to a need for students still needing some of those foundations in their basic reading. So in our English language arts block, very similar to what we do in 4th grade. So you'll see the beginning with our word study and our foundational skills. Now in 5th grade, our foundational skills are not learning your letters and sounds. It really focuses on your syllable types and syllable divisions and taking that understanding, applying it to spelling. We study prefixes, suffixes, root words, and applying that not just to spelling, but also to vocabulary and meaning. So the phonics that you see in 5th grade is really meant to help students as they encounter more complex multisyllabic words, to be able to read them, to be able to spell them, and to be able to understand the meaning. Then we move into the reading portion of our block. We have a reading comprehension mini lesson where you will see the teacher with a shared text working on whatever comprehension skill that we're working on that day or that week. After the whole group, the students divide into their literacy stations and their guided reading, where you'll see teachers working with students at their reading level, whether that's building them up because we might have some gaps to build, or students are participating in literature circles or book clubs and other literacy stations. We also have within our block, after our reading, we move on to our writing workshop. And you see the same thing. We are explicitly teaching our grammar skills for 5th grade. We're incorporating that when we explicitly teach the writing process. The teacher models that for the students go off and write, and the teacher's conferencing with students. Sometimes that's individually, sometimes that's with a group. And then we have, within our 5th grade block, we have a time specifically for intervention. And there's a number of different things that happen during this intervention time. We have some students who get served with Read 180 or System 44. Some students, that's when they work with the dyslexia specialist if they're in the dyslexia intervention program. And then others stay in the classroom and they're working with the teacher. And they could be working in a very targeted small group for remediation, but they can also be working with the teacher for extension as well. So that's what the reading portion, the ELA portion of our 5th grade block looks like. Now in 5th grade, does it end there? We also go into social studies. And so our 5th grade social studies, they have their scope and sequence that focuses on an overview of U.S. history. And when we look at integrating our English language arts and our social studies, we really do that through how students are exploring those social studies concepts, which means we're going to read about social studies, we're going to talk about those concepts in social studies, and we're going to write about them. And one of the things that we did this year in 5th grade is we piloted the use of document-based questions, or DBQs, and Janice Kinley's going to dive into that a little bit more with you later. We piloted that in our Honors, Inquire, and Odyssey classes. And what this does is this gives students practice really in deeply analyzing primary and secondary sources and responding to that. And that's really our bridge to what our students will do in pre-AP, AP, and IB social studies courses. So all of that within the block takes a lot of planning and coordination. And our 5th grade instructional coaches, we have one at each of the intermediate campuses, have worked side by side with their respective administrators to look at what is the vision for planning. And a big celebration really in 5th grade is, despite what this year has looked like, planning in 5th grade has really grown and blossomed into this really neat collaborative effort that focuses on alignment, rigor, and engagement.
I wanted to just share with you, I have a 5th grader in my neighborhood, and as a person who has actually died on the Oregon Trail many times, just because I was a poor planner, having this document-based questioning and this critical thinking and analyzing things and planning has been very, very productive and helpful, and I'm glad to see that we're doing it. So thank you.
And it's not just for that social studies, it is, like you said, that critical thinking, that reading, that writing. We know that writing component is coming to our 5th grade STAR test, and our students are going to be ready for it.
Thank you.
And then Brandy is going to talk to you about 6th through 8th grade.
And I know there's other people here who have also died on the Oregon Trail.
Hi. That brings us to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade language arts. I'm Brandy Morley, and I'm the secondary ELA coordinator. So at 6th grade, we start to see a little bit of a change in our TEKS, or our standards. And so those beginning reading and writing skills, such as phonological awareness and spelling, those stop at grade 5. And so from grade 6 and up, our standards really become more about reading to learn rather than learning to read. And so for that reason, the model that we follow in secondary looks a little bit different, but you'll notice several similarities. We implement the Readers Writers Workshop model in secondary ELA, and it's comprised of 4 main components. We have the independent reading component, a mini lesson, the workshop portion, and then we have a time for students to share. So I'll go into a little bit more detail in what takes place in each component, but similar to the elementary model, the Readers Writers Workshop model, it honors the recursive nature of our TEKS. Reading and writing are integrated, they're explicitly taught to students, and then students have an opportunity to practice those skills in their own reading and their own writing. So our first segment is independent reading, and during our independent reading time, students have an opportunity to self-select a book of their choice, and then they read that book for a sustained period of time. So we want to really, make sure that we are honoring and protecting that time for students to practice daily, and then it also gives them a resource to take home in the event that they want to continue that reading, outside of school. And our campus principals have played a really important and integral role in making sure that we have a wide variety of titles for students to select from, and helping us purchase books to add to our classroom libraries so that each teacher has, it's on a much smaller scale than our campus libraries, but each individual teacher has a classroom library, so students have more books to select from. And then during our mini lesson portion, that's when the teacher, models the reading or writing skill for the day. And then the workshop part, which is 50% of any class period. So for our 6th grade kiddos, that's about 40 minutes. And then for our 7th and 8th grade kids, that's about 50 minutes. And so that's the time when they really implement those skills that they were taught during the mini lesson, and they have a chance to apply those to their own reading and to their own writing. And so you might see several different things taking place during that workshop time. You might see students reading or writing independently. They could be discussing reading or writing either with a partner or a peer group. They might be utilizing some of our online resources, which for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade would include Compass Learning, USA Test Prep, Quill, which is an interactive writing and grammar resource, and then Pearson is our state-adopted resource for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then while students are partaking in those types of activities, the teacher has an opportunity to individually conference with the students. So that's a time when they can really, offer that individual feedback and talk to students about what they're doing in their reading and in their writing, and then offer suggestions for improvement and to helping those students grow. They might also be conducting small group instruction, which could be either for enrichment or for remediation, or they might be facilitating a book club or like a literature circle. And then our last portion is a time when students just have an opportunity to share either a piece of their own writing or maybe something that they have read, and they have a response to something that they've read. So overall, I think that the ELA classroom probably looks a little bit different than it did when you and I were learners. It's really evolved from a place where the teacher is the one doing all of the talking and telling students, what to learn and, almost what to think, to a place where our students are given opportunities every day to read, write, discuss, and think. And then that leads them to becoming independent readers and writers. So that concludes 6th, 7th, and 8th ELA.
I do have a quick question, and you may have mentioned this already, but the students select these books themselves, correct?
They do, with guidance from their teacher. So typically at the beginning of the year, a student take a reading inventory, and that's just to give the teacher an idea about what their interests are, if they have any hobbies, what do they like. And so then the teacher can kind of guide those selections. And so it'll also, when in the event that they have a student that says, well, I don't like to read, I've never read anything I like, then that'll kind of give the teacher, a starting point for, oh, well, if you like, sports, you might like this, or kind of gives them an opportunity to guide their selection.
Thank you.
All right, and Janice is going to talk about social studies.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our initiatives that we do in social studies. You can see that this is a field trip. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do it this year, but we take 7th graders to Washington on the Brazos. Fortunately, though, for COVID, a lot of the national and world museums have opened up, so a lot of teachers are doing virtual field trips that were not possible before. And so social studies in 6th grade, we teach world studies, and world studies sort of is a prerequisite to world geography in high school. The last time we teach Texas history as a course is in the 7th grade. And 8th grade teaches from colonization to Reconstruction through Reconstruction is what we teach in 8th grade. Inquire, Odyssey, Pre-AP, and dual all have a remediation, a differentiated curriculum that we have, and we also have dual language 6th grade and social studies and bilingual in 6th grade. One of the things that we've really asked teachers to step out of the box is with experiential activities, getting the kids up, moving, and actually experiencing history as best we can in the confines of a campus, and getting kids moving. And one that you see on the left is a Civil War experiential activity that they do, that they actually walk through stations around campuses of Civil War activities, and what you see is the Civil War tug-of-war. So again, it brings those experiences and helps them tie to the content, and they tie the memory to the content. On the right, you see them traveling through the Louisiana Purchase to the Pacific Ocean. You know, they go from the Great Plains, and pictures of the Great Plains. You see at the very bottom the Rocky Mountains built out of construction paper and stuff there. So it takes them through those experiential activities and stuff. And again, just to tie their memory to those activities. One of the things that we have really increased in social studies is the use of primary sources. We have asked the teachers to include at least 2 primary sources every week and 2 visuals every week. One, because there are a lot on the STAR test, and also the AP and IB test and prepare them for it. One of the ways we've adjusted some of our teaching several years ago, we started document-based questions, the DBQs, and we, as Charlene said, we piloted in the 5th grade this year for the first time, so we've been real pleased with the outcome on that. But we have document-based question kits that we have purchased through the 12th grade. And so this is an example of what that binder is on there, and we have mini Qs to regular DBQs depending on the age level. But basically what this does is it stops teaching history the way most of us were taught. You listen to history being told to you. This puts them as the student, as the historian. They're getting to tell the story. They're analyzing the information, and then they get to tell the story. So I think that's a unique way we're teaching history. I'm going to walk you through a DBQ process here. And so this is an 8th grade one, and it's early Jamestown. Why did so many colonists die? And so that's the question that the key question that they're going to analyze here. And so the parts of the DBQ that you see here, there's a hook. There's a little story at the beginning that gets the kids interested. You know, like, okay, now I really want to find out what happens here. And so there's a hook that's provided, and then the teachers do a mini lesson, 10 to 15 minutes, no longer, and then they're presented 5 to 12 documents, and they're primary and secondary sources that they're presented. And then they're asked to categorize those into different categories. And one of the things our AP teachers said that kids really do need is how to categorize items and stuff. So this is a good process to teach them how to categorize. And what they do is drop those documents into buckets. We give them a visual. And so if A and D document back up an argument, then you drop that document into that bucket, visually and stuff. And with little ones, we're hoping to get buckets that they drop it in, so they have that. But So you can sort of see here what the arguments this student built is environmental problems, settler skills, and relations with Indians. Those are the three categories that they're dropping documents into, and you can see that. Then they start building their thesis statement here, and with those arguments, and you can see the thesis statement here is the chicken foot diagram, makes it an easy visual for students to write that thesis statement. And their argument here is Collins died in early Jamestown for three big reasons. Their water was bad, they lacked key skills, and they had bad relations with the Powhatans or the Powhatans Indians. And so from this, then the kids can write essays, they can debate their arguments and stuff. So there are all kinds of things that you can do from this, but this really backs up our literacy plan in the district also. One of the things that we're really proud of is the history fair. Numerous years ago, we started the history fair up, and we've been very successful as a district with it. And we required a 6th and 7th grade pre-AP, and 6th grade competes only locally. 7th grade actually has the opportunity to go to regionals, which is Washington and the Brazos, if they are first or second place at their school competitions. Principals have been really good about letting us have their campuses and staff and stuff to host these, and we've had a great success with it. Optional participation, some of the students have liked it so much in the 6th and 7th grade that they have participated all the way through their senior year, and they do it strictly as optional. They meet on their own and get help from some of the instructional coaches and myself to help prepare that, but this is all on their own. And so they've liked the process and they continue doing it. We did it virtually this year. Thank goodness we got to have it this year. So all of it's done virtually, and it's been very successful. And again, we've had kids that have actually competed on the national level with it. So you can see some of our students and high school students that have competed in the past. They compete in categories such as essays. They compete in websites, documentaries, plays, and out of those categories, they get to choose, and they get to choose their topic. That's something very important. There's a theme that's given to them, and then they choose the topics out of which they do. Gives you sort of an idea of some of the things that we get to brag on in social studies, and appreciate your time. So, any questions?
Could you go back a slide?
Sure. That one?
What was the thought process for not requiring all of the 6th and 7th graders to participate?
We give them the opportunity, the regular students, the opportunity to participate, but it's not a requirement, so at this moment. So.
Well, I'm just, I was thinking about that too, that basically, okay, these pre-AP Odyssey and Inquirer, maybe they're, perhaps they've shown a little more motivation and so on, but it just was kind of interesting that they're required to do it whether they want to or not. Right? So, and sometimes I guess kids have to be pushed. So do you have any idea how many are participating that are not required to?
A lot depends on the teacher. We give them they do the research unit with it, and then some of them, the teachers really encourage your project is so good, let's take it to the next level. So they give them the opportunity. I would say probably in the last few years, we've had 10 to 12 every year that have participated out of the regular classes in it. So. Well,
I understand that you can only do so much. I guess I'm just, every now and then I think about, we all know that there are these undiscovered pearls, I guess, out there, kids who probably could do it and would do it. Maybe it's peer pressure that they don't. Maybe there's lots of reasons. I guess I would be interested in hearing if that's to know that that's at least being looked at and explored, and how much of a burden would that put on the people that are trying to run this, the fairs. Because I would just hate to see kids left out or leaving themselves out, I should say, because maybe they sort of get this subtle message that, well, maybe they're not, capable or something. Kids do things and don't do things for sometimes all the wrong reasons. And I know sometimes when you require kids to do things, that's backfires or it can backfire. But I can think back in my past, and I think if somebody did make me do something, I might not have done it, and it might have been very beneficial. So it's just a thought. I'm certainly not going to try to micromanage what y'all are doing, but I just sort of was interested in why that came to be.
We do offer them the research opportunities and stuff. They do go through a lot of the same processes and stuff and everything. So, and I
At least hope
understand.
the teachers would encourage those
Right.
that are at the least bit interested to please move forward.
Okay, sounds great.
I'm not trying to answer the question, so please don't take it that way, but I can just, as a seventh grade teacher many, many years ago, there's also the whole differentiation strategy. And if everybody was required, then it wouldn't be a differentiated activity either. And so, so there are elements there, but at the same time, I'm sure that there are, teachers that will stand up and help them move them into that area.
And I like the idea that it is required for those particular students, because that's one of the things that we've been looking for in the past, is those students that are on the higher end, to challenge them a lot more. And I think by requiring them and it not be optional for them, you're opening up a different pathway or so to say, for them to see that. Now, other students, I think the problem is that, and we've discussed it, is trying to encourage other students to be in those pre-AP classes that don't have the confidence in that. So I hope that the teachers can look and see that Johnny might do good in pre-AP and encourage him to participate in the class. And then we get more students in those classes participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and if that wraps up, thank you to the 5th and through 8th ELA for those, and social studies for those presentations. Thank you. And that will bring us up to energy management update.
Okay, it's that time of year where I get to go over the energy numbers with y'all from the past year, which they're actually pretty good, because we had that long shutdown with COVID, and that we were able to shut down a lot of buildings.
Are you listing positives from COVID?
There's one.
Okay, there we go. Yay.
That is a positive.
Paul, I did review all this in advance, and I as you go through this, you might, if you would address, if you were able to try to figure out how much the COVID actually affected the numbers, because we're looking at two sets of numbers, and obviously the more recent ones include a significant period when we were shut down. So do you have any way, and it may not be possible, but do you have any way to try to adjust the numbers to see where we perhaps would have turned out or close, or an estimate of where we would have turned out had we not been shut down? I know that's a tough question, but yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. I assume, hopefully.
It is a tough one. Hopefully it would be on the same lines as the averages that we've been doing, but I do know next year we'll have some increases just because of how we've operated the buildings with COVID, with the extended running hours and all of that. But
I think what I'm asking for is probably nearly impossible to
I'm trying to think in my head how to run that calculation, and I don't even know if I could with interval data, because some of it's so, it's difficult to judge the KW usage and the demand when one little spike could kill an entire month.
Yeah, well, I guess the only thing that might be a little helpful, and again, I don't know how hard this would be, but be to compare fall of, I guess it'd be the fall of 2019 with the, no, that's not right. I guess fall.
So just do the most previous school year.
Yeah, 2018.
with
and
all
fall,
in-person
yeah. With that,
learning.
before we shut down and just, the half year, basically, half year versus
Right.
half year, but,
Yeah, I can-
anyway,
I
I
can
don't
get
wanna-
those together.
yeah, I don't want to bog you down, but I thought, well, perhaps that would be an apples to apples comparison.
Right, right. I just went on the same format that I've typically done in the past with the baseline comparison, which in this is, the baseline is September of 17 to August of 18. As we go through, that was the baseline that was determined after all the 14 bond work was completed. And Ross and SFA were back in person and everything without construction. And then the other method I do is a 3-year average with the most recent 3 years with the current year that we're dealing with. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So at the policy reference, that it's just an energy management legal that we do these projects, and I give you all reports, and then the state requires that we report our energy usage and everything, which is done on a quarterly basis on our website through the finance page. And then a quick overview of this whole presentation. The data comparative to baseline, which is September of 2017 to August of 18, and comparing it to September of 2019 to August of 2020, Bryan ISD had a decrease of approximately 9% of our KWH usage, which was a little over 2.8 million kilowatt hours. And then when we compare that data to the previous 3-year average, there was a decrease in electricity by 13%, or a little over 4.4 million kilowatt hours. And then it was down to due to the COVID impact during the spring and summer of 2020, when school didn't come back after spring break, and then our normal summer operating procedures. And then currently we just have one major project going on, and it's the Seco Lone Star project, which was approved about, I guess that was almost a year ago, this past June, and or this coming June. And that one is in the very final stages, probably, may not be May, but the June board meeting probably bringing the closeout for that. But that is about 98% complete. It's just in the punch list stage of making sure all the light fixtures, the thousands of them, were changed out and accounted for, because some got missed, and as we do our walks, we find them and they come back and do some new lights. And then the smart business. So BTU offers a rebate for energy efficiency projects through their customers. And so far, Bryan ISD, year to date since 2014, has received over $220,000 in rebates from their smart business program. And these have included the first installment of the Seco project, some chiller installs in the past, lighting changeouts in the past. And then currently this year will be the second installment of the Seco project, which we're getting all those numbers together to provide to BTU for them to come up with our rebate amount for it. And then these next few slides are going to be the electricity usage breakdown, but it's going to be the other energy metrics as well, with natural gas and our domestic and irrigation water. So the electricity for baseline, you can see those numbers as we had a decrease across all categories, whether it was total district, total elementary, total secondary, and then the KWH costs, and then the total electric costs, which is our KWH and our KW charges, which that had a decrease of a little over $316,000. And then one thing I remember from last time I presented this was y'all asked for like a square foot, break it down per square foot comparison. And for that baseline, the baseline for the total district was around 97 cents a square foot. And then through this past year, that September of 19 to August of 2020, it had gone down to 88 cents per square foot in KWH usage. or no, that was the dollar per square foot. KWH had gone from 9.74 to 8.91. And then as we compare that as well to the 3-year average, we had decreases again across the board, but with that one encompassing a longer time period and getting that average, our electric costs were down by a little over $471,000. And then the per square foot and the dollar per square foot had decreased from 9.96 kWh a square foot to 8.66 across the district. And then the cost went from 99 cents a square foot down to 85 cents a square foot. And then natural gas had a decline as well during that baseline year when compared to the baseline year, and it came out to roughly a little over $110,000 decrease from September of 18 to September of 19 to August of 2020. And then breaking that down into the per square foot basis, we went down from baseline year of 0.14 CCF per square foot to 0.12 CCF, and then our costs went from 10 cents a square foot down to 7 cents a square foot. And then likewise, it's the same kind of numbers with the 3-year average. Let's go back to that one. This one did have a lesser decrease in the costs of $35,000 versus the $110,000 compared to the baseline. And then the per square foot went from 0.14 to 0.13 CCF per square foot, and 9 cents to 8 cents per square foot. And then our water doesn't have, I mean, they're big numbers, but water's pretty cheap. So comparative to baseline, it was about a $40,000 decrease in our water costs from that time period. And then we really didn't see too much of a difference, especially in our dollars per square foot. We went from 11 cents to 10 cents a square foot, but our usage went from 24.5 gallons roughly to just under 21 gallons per square foot. And some of that's also equated to leaks that are found and repaired as well. And then when we take it to the 3-year average, there was a difference in cost of roughly just under $59,000 and almost 15 million gallons less used. And some of this is attributed to weather as well, considering irrigation is in there with rainfall amounts that we get through the year. And then when we break it down per square foot in both the gallons and the dollars, we had decreases across both of those as well.
Paul, can I ask, do you think that now that all the major football fields are turf and not grass, do you think that's had something to do with some of that?
Oh, it helps. It helps completely. It helps with that. But of course, all the practice fields and stuff are still our natural grass, so we have that. And
we can work on that in baseball. I'm sure baseball would
that's
love.
a Kevin question. But it does help not having those 1 to 2 irrigation meters on those campuses with supplying the water to that. Luckily with the irrigation though, it's only a single charge, so we only get charged for the water we use for irrigation, whereas in our domestic water, we also have sewer attached to it. So with our wastewater charges and those, when we have leaks, the wastewater becomes almost a higher number than the actual usage itself. So we try to, but unfortunately with water versus electricity, we don't have the interval data on water. So we don't really know there's a leak if someone doesn't say it, it's not found until we get the bills in and go through the bills and see what that, see if any of those increases or anything jump out off of a bill. But you'd be surprised on how numbers kind of become ingrained in your head after you looked at them for monthly for 6 years now with the utility bills here. So, But I try to find those as quick as possible at the beginning of the month, and I'll send work orders in, or if it's a pretty big number, I'll just call the maintenance department, have them send someone out there and do a leak detection. A lot of times it's just toilets running that no one ever put any work order in, just let it go, so. And then one single toilet can cause quite a bit of money cost, so. And then this slide's been in here before on how energy efficiency projects are chosen. First off, I look at energy savings. Is it going to reduce our peak demand, or is it just going to reduce our energy, which is our KWH? I prefer the peak demand because KWH is just a byproduct of your peak demand times your hours. And I can't reduce the hours or change that. So if I can reduce our peak demand, then automatically we'll reduce our energy of our KWH. Then payback period of that it is at least 1 year prior to the warranty expiration of that particular product. And then I get with the maintenance department to figure out how much of a burden is something on them. A lot of times it's lighting. It's just, you got to bring lifts in. You got to do this. It just takes an effort to replace a single light. So try to replace those, which now we don't have to really look at because everything's LED that we have. So it'll last a lot longer. And then how often the facility is used. The more it's used, the quicker the payback is and everything. And then the availability of funds, and then the potential rebate that BTU will offer on that project. And then some of the really the only in-process project that's going right now is the SECO project, and it is, like I said earlier, in the very tail end stages. But just to refresh your memory, that one started this past summer. It was a lighting upgrade. It was ventilation control, which at the time was just to reduce our outside air. But it turns out that technology of bipolar ionization actually is very beneficial to reducing COVID. So that kind of helped us without realizing it, that doing this, we had this COVID measure put in through the SECO project. And then optimizing some of our control systems at a few of our campuses that we've been having problems with. And then power conditioning, which basically just means we even out the voltage that's going into the school so we don't have the ups and downs of the spikes, and the equipment will operate a little more efficiently with it without those fluctuations. And that project was a little over $6.4 million and had just under an 8.5-year payback. And with that, like the LED lights we put in had 20-year warranties on the lights that were put in, so well under our normal threshold. And the goals that I've put forth for the energy management is to reduce our KWH and our KW both with no negative impact on the learning environment, as well as reducing our costs. And then just maintaining that we utilize interval data, one, to find issues that are happening in our electricity usage. And then last is just to make sure that BTU's rates, that we're on the best possible rate through the utility. With us being a part of a municipally owned utility, ours are all city ordinance rates, and making sure that our meters are on the best rate for that specific meter. For instance, we have 6 meters that are on time of use rates, and those are at Bryan High's baseball, softball fields, Merrill Green Stadium, SFA's football stadium, and then at Rudder has it for their baseball and their softball. And those are on with the time of use rates. By being on that rate itself, since they've been on there, has saved over $280,000 with that, just based on the rate class it's associated with, comparative to the one it could be associated with. And then just some examples of interval data, which those do not show up, the numbers on the bottom, but those are dates and times. But this was an example of a parking lot where the one on the left shows parking lots coming on at 5:30, and just so you know, this was dated of July 9th of 2017, where we all know that it is not dark at 5:30, and it was just this one turned out it was a time clock had gone haywire and decided to revert back to its old settings, And once it was fixed, the next day, you can see how it starts going on then at around 8:30 or so, when it gets dark. And then an example of one of a elementary school this was August 4th of 17, of one that it was running all day long at an elementary, which we typically don't do that during the summer. And then on the other side of it, you should see a elementary school where it turns out an air handler, all those squiggly lines at the end, it was never actually turning off and going back down to that's probably around 25 kW during its off time. You can still see it stayed around that 50 to 75 and just kind of off and on the whole night, which isn't good for the equipment. It's just also extra energy usage that is not needed when nobody's there.
Your numbers came through on the data that was sent to us?
Yes.
So they came through
Yes.
correctly for us?
They just didn't show up well on the screen.
Paul, aren't we using more buildings this summer with all our summer initiatives? So either federal or state, might we, with all this gazillions of dollars that the federal government is sending away?
All the free money?
Yeah, it was a big article in the paper, and I noticed today, and I noticed Texas wasn't mentioned, but all the billions of dollars that are being sent out.
To other places.
So can we, I'm sure there's grants, I'm sure there's something we can apply for, and I'm sure.
Yeah, we're actually looking into that.
That's a very good question, Ms. Waller, and we, as we speak, are working on all of that. We have a committee formed with Dr. Whitbeck included, of course, to claim these very items that you're explaining, because we will have to use more buildings this summer for accelerated learning and to address the learning loss. So we're putting all that towards the ESSER grants. You know, they keep alleging millions and billions of dollars. We're yet to see any of that money. We're trying the very best we can to position ourselves to be on the receiving end. We're going to claim everything that we can. And he mentioned earlier also, we will see the impact, because once we started bringing the kids back into the building in the face-to-face model in August, we made adjustments for the well-being and safety of our students and staff to run the air conditioning more so than we normally do. We knew we had to have the air circulating earlier and longer, just so there would not be any stagnant air. There was a big buzz about that with COVID-19 and preventing that. And we were in really great shape because of that SECO loan and the ionizers and cleaning the air and all the things that were unintended that did work out in our favor.
Could we get money for that, retro back to?
We're looking into that.
We're absolutely looking at that. We are leaving no stone unturned. So we have a pretty robust committee of all of us, and we're looking to see what others are doing in the state and what will be allowed. This is kind of uncharted territory, but we're going to claim every single thing that we can. Even with construction, some of the things that we're doing with COVID and pandemic in mind can go on that list for possible reimbursement.
Yeah, like these ionizers are going to be utilized in new construction from here on out. Another byproduct of the interval data is just that, where let's just say we run normal summer schedule, just throwing times out, 9 to 1. Well, now with all these extra programs, we're going to go from 7:30 till 3. I can go into the interval data, pull out that extra time, and pull it into a spreadsheet and run those calculations to know what is that increased usage, what is that increased demand, and then just correlate it to BTU's rates and come up with a dollar amount. And I can do that through, I have interval data now from, I think, 2015, so I can do that from for any time period that's come about with this, whether it's increased in the regular school year or whatever.
So we're ready.
We're
Just
ready.
Get all that money.
It's just more spreadsheet work.
Well, one issue that I'd like to ask quickly about, it's easy to identify and hard to fix, especially for our older buildings, but we've got some construction coming our way. And I know that you're involved in that and consulting with architects and so on. Is where we don't use an entire building. We either in the evenings or in the summer or whatever, and trying to zone our buildings with the systems we have, I assume is not an easy task. Has that been incorporated in any of our recent buildings, and is there any possibility of trying to come up with still an efficient system that allows us to use part of a building without running the system?
Oh, yeah, we can definitely separate out parts of the building through the controls. The tricky part is just making sure there's enough load on the chiller to keep it operating, and it doesn't just shut itself off. So that's, like typically in the mornings, just running the kitchen won't keep the chiller on. It's typically the kitchen, cafeteria, office area, maybe one other little wing, bring all those online together, and then through the increments, because BTU does it in 15-minute increments. So if we space it out around 17 minutes, we can offset everything coming on at once and have it all come down in different sections, come online, as long as and we scale that back to start so that everything's at temp prior to students and faculty arriving.
Well, anything that can be done to make that work maybe even better with our new construction would certainly be appreciated, because it's great to be able to say, hey, we're being very efficient with the use of our buildings and keep the people comfortable without, again, having everything conditioned.
No, for sure. That is an ongoing task to make sure that is done and correctly, and that's where the interval data comes in, is to show us that it is working, or different areas aren't reading the schedule, aren't keeping the schedule, and vice versa.
Well, and again, this is an important topic, because everything we say can be used for better purposes than.
No, for sure. 100%. 100%.
If I may, I'd like to just add to the funding conversation. As our team is working on a lot of plans, which include additional facility use, but also academic planning for learning loss. How are we going to supplement pay for those who, agree to work more hours next year, working with children, all of those types of things. We can't wait until these decisions are made to do our planning. So we're planning now, I guess, in the good faith that our elected officials in Texas will see to it to allocate the money that's coming from the federal government in ESSER 2 and 3 to the schools. At this time, though, we are not getting any indication of that, but I believe and Mr. Bisal, correct me, but between ESSER 2 and 3, Bryan ISD would be entitled to $58 million. ESSER 1, which occurred last May, I believe, we were entitled to $4.2 million, but we were immediately given that number and then told that our budget would be offset, so we did not ever see that money. So we're in a very precarious place because we know what the needs are. We know that we can't just sit around and hope and wait. We've got to do something to make sure we're covering our bases for the children. But at the same time, when you don't have a true budget to work with, except for your regular money, and even that's not quite clear, it does become a challenge. But I do want you to know that the team is working on it. It involves every leader that you see out here. It involves everyone's participation in that conversation.
And Dr. Whitbeck, just to clarify too, when the state accepts the federal money and our budget was offset, that meant that we had to meet a higher threshold in terms of accounting for federal dollars that technically we did not get, correct?
Well, and Mr. Bisal can chime in, but at the time in which we were allocated that money, we were given certain items like PPE from the state. We were allocated things like that. They paid for our Schoology license. They paid for things that would certainly have had to come out of our regular budget. So I wouldn't say that it was that we weren't given assistance. We were absolutely. But would it be to the tune of $4.1 million? No, it would not. But there was help given, and a lot of our students were online. As you recall, we started with 55% face-to-face. So that changed a little bit of our needs in terms of we saved some money on utilities, but we really didn't save much money in the number one area, which is about 84% of our budget, and that's personnel. So in that regard, personnel and benefits, we really couldn't save much there, because whether the teachers were online or they were face-to-face, we still needed them. And so that's our biggest way to save money, and yet we really couldn't do much with it.
I'm just going to bring us back to the energy and the energy efficiency. I think as we talk about and explore, one thing that we can't also discount is there was savings that we saw last year. And then even forward as we start to plan for next year, I think there, as I've said with academics and everything else, there's always going to be an asterisk out beside 2020 for about the next 10 years. We know it's a recognized, it's a very well-known anomaly. And so we think there's always, there's always going to be an asterisk there. But thank you for your time. And if there's nothing else, then thank you. All right, and I think we have up next is a cybersecurity and image filtering software update.
Yes, sir. And I will make mine quick because mine's just a little update. I didn't even make a slide. So you'll remember a few months back, we had a parent concern come forward about while students were inside of our network, being able to share content that could be inappropriate, and how we didn't have a mechanism through Google to monitor what was going on that side exactly, especially with images specifically. So we had talked to some companies, several we've worked with, and we have one that we went ahead and felt confident enough about to make a purchase for 1 year. It's called Securely, and what it does, it looks at images and evaluates whether it could be an inappropriate image. What's nice is it actually pre-pixelates it, sends it over to our software administrator who takes a look at it and is able to determine, is this going to be a discipline issue? Do we need to get the campus and school leadership involved? And so I'm happy to report so far it's working. It will even find things that aren't inappropriate. I even joked with Dr. Whitbeck, I could even show one of those, how it's pixelated, but we didn't want to create the drama at the board meeting. So, very happy about that move. I think we'll know more within the year how it's performed, and if we feel like it's really fulfilling all of those needs. And then just on a cybersecurity note, while I was up here, I was going to share that we've recently been part of the Homeland Security and the National Cybersecurity Task Force. And now I get a report every week of suspicious domains and things like that that have really kind of wrapped up our cybersecurity awareness. Just really proud of what the team has done, and that's going on in the background as well. So just trying to make sure that we're keeping our network and infrastructure and students safe. And that was it.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Get it out easy.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move us down into business services, where I believe we have about 3 different things to consider. And first up is the approval of contract for annual financial audit renewal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. McCall. The Texas Education Code requires that each independent school district annually have a financial audit conducted of our finances and assets, and then issue an annual financial report. For the last 5 years, we've engaged the firm of Weaver and Tidwell to do this. We've come to the end of what we originally had discussed with the board about using this firm. Looking at it at this point, we are not required by law or anything to change firms. There's no legal requirements. There have been some bills that have come out to discuss, possibly putting something in place to do that. But at this point, going forward with this firm makes sense to us, and I'd be recommending that to maintain the continuity and consistency of what we have been working on. The past year has been anything but normal. or average, and you would say. There's several things that were in our audit as of last year at the year end that carry forward and would take additional work and cost with starting up a new firm for that purpose. Some of those we've talked about with the CARES Act and Corona Relief. We also had a hail damage claim that carried over. We're still working on that. That was some additional work that both my team and the audit team had to work through for many of us the first time. And also the ESSER, as we said, those are still ongoing. ESSER 1 was last year, and ESSER 2 and 3 are coming now. So there's been a lot of work on that as well. So at this point, we would ask that we recommend moving forward with Weaver and Tidwell for the next 2 years to clean that up and make sure that all that gets tied down.
I move approval to engage Weaver and Tidwell to complete the district's annual financial audit and prepare the annual financial report for the 2 fiscal years ending August 31, 2021 and August 31, 2022.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harland and a second by Dr. Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We'll move down into contract for the bank depository renewal.
Yes, sir. And this is another item that we're looking forward and trying to maintain consistency and continuity. Changing bank depository or even bidding out is a pretty lengthy and involved process. We feel that we have a good relationship with BB&T and a good structure for our accounts with them. Texas school districts are required to designate a bank depository every 2 years to receive and disperse our funds. According to TEA rules, we have one more 2-year extension available on that, and then we will have to go in 2 years. We would have to go out for bid on those, and that's all designated in the Texas Education Code as well by TEA that we do that. So at this time, we're recommending that we renew with them, with BB&T for the 2-year renewal.
I move approval of the renewal of the bank depository contract to Branch Banking and Trust, BB&T, for a period of 2 years ending August 31st of 2023.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Duane, a second by Mrs. Benford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and that will move us down into the SFA gym floor approval.
Okay, so this floor was damaged in that, the freeze in February. And I know I've already brought one agenda item to y'all a couple of months ago to replace the floor. Well, as we started demolition in there and removed all the maple, in that original, we had 2,000 square feet of subfloor as well included. Well, 2,400 square feet ended up being damaged. And as we took the subfloor off, it turns out there was water completely underneath the subfloor. And it has now, the water moisture levels were read at 8-foot increments all around the entire, and a grid pattern around the entire court, and it was deemed a total loss. So now we have to replace the entire subfloor and sleeper system and replace it with a new one. With all that being said, is going to require a change order of $88,000.78 to complete this project. And insurance has been aware, and they approved everything last Thursday, late.
Okay, good job.
When you got down to the very, very bottom, how many floors ago was that? Can you tell?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It was on its last sanding. I do know that, so there was no more sanding of the floor. It was a very older system. It was a system of mastic poured, which was basically tar along the bottom, and then 2x4 set, then another layer of tar, and then it was spiked in, and then the subfloor was nailed to it, and then the wood floor went on top. So Now, with that, there was no cushioning with that court system. It is definitely not a system that is used today. There's been way more advances in the court since then.
In the last 45 years.
Pretty much, this century. So it's,
your gym floor or my gym floor.
it is, yeah, and unfortunately, just with cost of lumber and everything else, it's just crazy, especially on the lumber side, because it'll go back with the sleeper system, and then they'll put 3/4 inch plywood on there, which, as the contractor is telling me this past summer when we did Bryan High, was around $16, $18 a sheet. And he just got it from his lumber company at $54
Crazy.
That is,
a sheet.
yeah, and we can't go without a gym floor for a while, so,
Right.
man. But it's gonna be so much better for the kids, I mean, now that.
Oh, it will. It'll be very comparative to the gym floor that I did last summer at Bryan High with Gym 1. It'll be pretty much that same kind of system.
Good, well, they deserve
Yeah.
it.
I move approval of the change order for the SFA gym floor replacement to NAH Sports Flooring in the amount of $88,078 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Davis, a second by Mrs. Waller. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And at this time, the board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code Chapter 551.072, deliberations about real property, and .074, personnel matters. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 1:33. Board reconvened in open session at 1:47. No action was taken in closed session. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Or adjourn.